Welcome back, guys. This is my number 7 for videos for the flashcards, and actually starting out with one of the slides we've actually done in the past, which is for the coup plan. Basically, if things goes to crap, make sure you have a plan in place for what you're going to do until everything gets back up and running. Which Fansly says it right here. So, yeah, we did the slide already. Alright, Code of Ethics. Professional behavior depends on basic ethical standards such as honesty and fairness. Some professionals may have developed codes of ethics to cover difficult situations. Some businesses may also have a code of ethics to communicate the values it expects its employees to practice. Disposal policy. This is a policy, or simply the act performing the destruction of sensitive materials when decommissioning out-of-date or used systems. This policy should set up what information should be securely eliminated, for example by shredding paper documents or CDs or by erasing magnetic media. Many PCs, components, and consumables can also be eliminated through recycling schemes, reducing the pressure on landfill sites and minimizing the environmental impact of any toxic products used in their manufacture. HR policy. These are the procedures used by a company to train employees, thus strengthening overall security. It also includes screening new employees through background checks, ensuring employees are set up with the correct privileges when they join or change job roles, and ensuring the privileges are revoked if the employee is fired or retires. ISA, Interconnection Security Agreement. Any federal agency interconnecting its IT system to a third party must create this agreement to govern the relationship. This agreement sets out a security risk awareness process and commit the agency and supplier to implementing security controls. Job rotation. The policy preventing any one individual performing the same role or task for too long. This deters fraud and prevents better oversight of the person's duties. Mandatory vacations. The process of forcing an employee to take their vacation time during which someone else fulfills their duties. MLA is Master License Agreement. This is a type of software license that enforces certain conditions on the licensee, such as agreeing to install the software for an agreed number of users, desktops, or servers. Such as agreements will also set out limited warranties and support arrangements. MOA is Memorandum of Agreement. Legal document forming the basis of two parties to cooperate without a formal contract, a cooperative agreement. These documents are often used by public bodies. MOU is Memorandum of Understanding, usually a preliminary or exploratory agreement to express an intent to work together. PHI is Protected Health Information, information that identifies someone as the subject of medical or insurance records, plus associated with hospital and laboratory test results. PII is Personally Identifiable Information, data that can be used to identify or contact an individual, or in the case of identity theft, or impersonate them. A social security number is a good example of this type of data. Oh, go back. It can also include names, date of birth, email address, telephone number, street address, biometric data, and so on. Privacy policy. The policy generally covers what monitoring and data collections will be made of an organization's employees. This policy is also important when collecting data from third parties such as customers and suppliers. Security policy. This policy should be set out requirements for protecting technology and information and assets from threats and misuse. The policy should be communicated effectively to all levels of the organization and backed up with procedures and resources to put it into effect. Separation of duties. For a critical business function to be secure, it may be necessary to ensure that no one person can perform that function. SLA is Service Level Agreement, operating procedures and standards for a service contract. Standards and guidelines. Policy sets the overall tone for how something should be done and is usually intended for a general audience. More detailed guidelines may be produced for different audiences such as end users and technical staff. In addition to internal standards, many job tasks may be guided by external standards, legislation, and best practice guidance. External standards may come from industry practice, professional organizations, or legislation. DNS harvesting. Using open source intelligence, OSINT, to gather information about domains, subdomains, hosting provider, administrator contacts, and so on. Honeypot. The The computer is set up to entice attackers with the purpose of discovering attack strategies and weaknesses in the security configuration. HoneyNet. A whole network set up to entice attackers with the purpose of discovering attack strategies and weaknesses in the security configuration. IIS, Internet Information Services. A web server product shipped with Windows. IPconfig, or ifconfig. A command line utility providing information about the IP configuration of a workstation. Netstat. A utility to show the network information on a machine running TCP/IP, notably active connections and routing table. Network Mapper. Software that can scan a network and identify hosts, addresses, protocols, network interconnections, and so on. Nmap. Versatile port scanner used for topology, host, service, and operating system discovery and enumeration. NSLOOKUP. A tool for acquiring DNS server records. Operating system fingerprinting. The process of identifying the type and version of an operating system or server application by analyzing its response to network scans. Port scanner. Software that enumerates the status of a TCP and UDP ports on a target system. This process can be blocked by some firewalls and IDS. Service discovery. Using network scans to discover open TCP and UDP ports, plus information about the servers operating them. Steganography. Steganography literally means hidden writing. It is a technique for obscuring the presence of a message. Typically, information is embedded where you would not expect it to find it. A hidden message in a picture, for instance. This technique is used for counterfeit deterrence and detection and creation of covert channels embedding messages in IP headers. TCP dump. A command line packet sniffer. Wireshark. A widely used open source packet analyzer. Topology discovery. Also called footprinting, this is the process where an attacker or pen tester starts to identify the structure of a target network. Banner grabbing. The process of probing a server to try to elicit any sort of response to identify the server application and version number of any other interesting detail about the way the server is configured. ARP. A command used to examine a machine's ARP cache. Ping. A command used to detect the presence of a host on a particular IP address or that responds to a particular host name. Tracert or traceroute. A command used to probe the path from one end system host to another, listing the immediate systems, routers providing the link. Availability. This is the principle that something should not be so secure that it is completely inaccessible. CERT as in Cyber Incident Response Team, or CERT as in Computer Emergency Response Teams. The team responsible for incident response. This team must have expertise across a number of business domains: IT, HR, legal, and marketing, for instance. Classification. The process of organizing and labeling any significant data resource is mandatory access control system. Information is formally organized with labels such as top secret, secret, and confidential. First responder. Critical first steps taken when a security incident is discovered, taken by the first appropriate individual on the scene. General staff should be trained to identify an incident and report it. Incident reporting. Employees are a vital component in effective security and health and safety model. Company policy should set out procedures for alerting the appropriate individuals of potential incidents, how quickly to do so, and in what matter. Usually cheat sheets on your desk. Like if you get like a weird email, cheat sheet will tell you, okay, cool, sent to the network team. Not sent to the network team. Call the network team and let them know about it. Yeah, don't send to anybody. Incident response plan. Procedures and guidelines covering appropriate priorities, actions, and responsibilities in the event of security incidents. The stages will generally be notification, investigation, remediation, and follow-up. The incident response is often handled by a special group. The security incident response team, made up of staff with both technical skills and decision-making authority. Incident response procedures. The actions and guidelines for dealing with security incidents. Incident. The act of violating an explicit or implied security policy, otherwise known as a breach or attempted breach. Downtime. The disruption of business process caused by an incident. Incident response exercise. The test exercise of a mock incident to help staff develop competencies and identify deficiencies in procedures in tools. Data breach. Attack that has been successful in obtaining information that should have been kept secret or confidential. Lessons learned. Follow-up actions performed after an incident has been resolved, usually in the form of a meeting, to access how processes and procedures can be improved, like during a tabletop. Scope. In terms of incident response, the number of systems affected, in which describes the scale of the incident and its response. Basically, what's the scope of the whole incident? Role-based responsibilities. The task of various expertise and business areas that are called upon during a response. Preparation phase. Within the incident response process, this is the process of making system resilient to attack in the first place, including hardening, policies, procedures, etc. Identification, detection, and analysis phase. Within the incident response process, determining whether an incident has taken place and assessing how severe it might be. Containment, eradication, and recovery phase. Within the incident response process, limiting the scope and impact of the incident. Post-incident activity phase. Within the activity response process, analyzing the incident and responses to identify whether the procedures or systems could be improved. Detection time. The amount of time before a data breach is identified. Whistleblower. An employee or ex-employee who reports misconduct. AES Advanced Encryption Standard. A modern encryption suite providing symmetric encryption. The same key is used to encrypt and decrypt. This encryption suite is very strong cipher with many applications, including being part of the WPA2 Wi-Fi encryption scheme. Algorithm. A defined method performing a process, but in encryption, and in terms specific, refers to a technique used to encrypt a message. Asymmetric algorithm. This cryptographic algorithm uses different cryptographic algorithms, use different keys. Public or private keys are linked, but the private key is not derivable from the public one. Most popular type of this cryptography, RSA, is based on factoring large numbers to discover whether they are prime. A number is given to divisible by itself, and 1, it is difficult. If there were a breakthrough in mathematics that made factoring large numbers less computationally intensive, the security of these cryptographic products would be broken. Epileptic curve cryptography, also known as ECC. Different means of creating key pairs such as easy to determine that the keys are linked, but very difficult to determine one key from the other. The other advantage of this key creation methodology is the algorithm is more efficient, allowing smaller keys to give the same level of security as larger RSA keys. Birthday attack. A cryptographic function that may produce collisions where the function produces the same output for two different inputs. These may be connected to weak keys. The birthday paradox means that these collisions are less computationally intensive to attack than pure brute force. That is, you do not need to try every possible permutation to discover the weakness. Certificate. A public key that has been affirmed by some agency, validating that the owner of the key is really who he or she says they are. This allows the sender to encrypt the message using a public key in the knowledge that only the recipient will be able to read it. Comparative strength of algorithms. The choice of encryption algorithm is mostly driven by application. For example, symmetric encryption is the best choice for file or folder encryption for performance reasons. The basic measure of strength within an algorithm is the key size. Most current algorithms support the key sizes of 128-bit or better. It is important to note that while an algorithm may be secure, its implementation in a particular product may not be. Cryptographic access control. The basis of most, sometimes you have, authentication systems. A general example of this process is the user is given a smart card that stores a digital certificate issued to the user by the certificate authority. To authenticate the user's presence, the card to the reader inputs a PIN which protects against use of a stolen card. Cryptographic algorithm. A mathematical function that transforms plain text into ciphertext in which a way that the plain text cannot be recovered without knowledge of the appropriate key. Cryptographic confidentiality. A general term describing when something can only be viewed by someone in possession of the correct key because it has been encrypted. In other words, only a person with the key can read the message, so it is said to be that the main problem with the secure distribution of the key. Typically, asymmetric encryption is used to distribute the key, as asymmetric algorithms are processor and memory intensive. They are not suitable for encrypting long messages. And we're going to end this video here. I think it's video number 7. Thanks, guys.